Danny Rohl may have just sent a very clear message about where Bojan Miovski stands right now, because in Rangers' slog of a 1-0 victory over St Mirren, there was one decision that stood out more than anything else, and it's a decision that's now raising serious questions. According to Andy Halliday, Rohl showed that he simply isn't having Miovski by choosing to bring on Telo Asgard ahead of him. Now, that's not just a random substitution, that's a choice. And it's a choice that tells you a lot about what the manager is thinking right now. Halliday believes Rohl is running thin on patience with the summer signing, and when you look at the recent games, it's hard to ignore the pattern that's developing. Miovski hasn't started a game since the beginning of February. He didn't get off the bench in either of the 2 games against Celtic, and those are matches where Rangers were desperate for a goal. Yet even in those moments, he wasn't called upon. Then you look at what happened against St Mirren. Yes, he came on, but it was only for 9 minutes, and it came at a point where Rohl had essentially gone through his other options, but the key moment actually came before that. When Youssef Chermiti was taken off, that was the opportunity. That was the moment where you expect a striker to come on for a striker, a like-for-like change. Instead, Rohl brought on Asgard, and he adjusted the system to make it work, rather than turning to Miovski. That's what sparked the discussion on BBC Sports Sound. Stephen Thompson put it directly to Halliday. What it shows me is that the manager is not having Bojan Miovski at all, is he? And Halliday's response was simple. It doesn't look that way, and when you break it down, that conclusion is based on what we're seeing, not just opinion, because the decisions are consistent. No starts, no minutes in big games, and even when a natural opportunity presents itself, he's not the one being turned to. Instead, the system is changed. And that's what makes this stand out. Now, alongside that, there were also concerns raised about Youssef Chermiti. Despite the result, Halliday wasn't convinced by what he saw. Chermiti had a big chance in the first half to make it 2-0. A clear opportunity inside the 6-yard box, and in that moment, Halliday felt he looked unconvincing. And that feeds into a wider point. Because while Chermiti's numbers in recent weeks are strong, there are still questions about his overall play in certain situations. This is a player who has just won Premiership Player of the Month for February, a hat-trick against Hearts, a brace against Celtic, big performances in big games, but there's another side to it. 8 of his 9 goals this season have come against their title rivals, and outside of that, there have been games where he hasn't had the same impact. That's where the inconsistency comes into the conversation, and it's also why Halliday was surprised by what he described as a lack of confidence, because when a player is coming off a run like that, you expect them to be full of belief, sharp, decisive, but instead he suggested that Chermiti can look unsure of himself, particularly in front of goal. And that's not something you'd expect given the form he's been in. So when you put everything together, this wasn't just about one performance, it was about what the decisions revealed. On one side, you have Miovski, a player who is finding himself increasingly on the fringes, with selection decisions suggesting he's not currently trusted. And on the other, you have Chermiti, producing in big moments, but still showing signs of uncertainty in others. And all of it comes back to what we saw on that pitch, because sometimes it's not what's said after the game that matters most. It's the decisions made during it. And in this case, those decisions are speaking very loudly. In other news, Andreas Skov Olsen's situation at Rangers is shaping up to be one of the more intriguing subplots as the season approaches its decisive phase. Signed on loan from Wolfsburg in January, the Danish winger arrived at Ibrox with a reputation as a potential match winner, someone capable of tipping the balance in a tightly contested Scottish Premiership title race. However, his impact so far has fallen short of those expectations. Across his opening 9 appearances, the 26-year-old has managed just 1 goal and 2 assists, a return that does not yet reflect the influence many anticipated. For a player brought in to add cutting edge in the final third, those numbers underline a slow adaptation period rather than immediate transformation. The question now is whether this is simply a bedding in phase or a sign that the move may not ultimately deliver. From a contractual standpoint, Rangers hold a clear decision to make. Skov Olsen's loan deal runs until June 30th, 2026, providing a relatively extended window for assessment. However, his long-term future remains tied to Wolfsburg, where he is under contract until 2029. That effectively rules out any cut price scenario, and Rangers would need to activate an agreed purchase option worth around £8.6 million to secure his services permanently. Whether that fee represents value will depend entirely on what he produces between now and the end of the campaign. At present, there is a sense that more is required, not just statistically, but in terms of overall influence and consistency. Former Rangers forward Peter Lovenkrands believes part of the challenge lies beyond tactics or form. The Dane has pointed to the weight of expectation that inevitably follows any Scandinavian winger arriving in Glasgow, particularly given the legacy of Brian Laudrup. Speaking earlier this month, Lovenkrands explained, "It is always the same. It is the worst thing for a Danish winger to come into Rangers, and everyone expects him to be as good as Brian Laudrup, the third best ever Danish player. That pressure does not help, but he has potential to be great. He has potential to be very, very good. He needs a game where everything clicks for him. If he gets that goal and plays a good game, that will give him confidence." Those comments reflect a broader truth about life at Ibrox. Confidence and momentum can change perceptions quickly. One standout performance could shift the narrative entirely. Manager Danny Rohl has offered a measured and patient stance on the situation, indicating that no final decision will be made until the end of the season. His comments suggest that internally there remains belief in what Skov Olsen can offer. "I don't have to think about this now," Rohl said. "We know and we saw in moments which parts he can help us, especially in the final third. I think he is also very tactical, intelligent. You see this, but he will also agree that there is still more to come. This is what we try to bring out of him as soon as possible." That approach hints at encouraging signs behind the scenes, particularly in training, even if they have yet to fully translate into matchday performances. It also reinforces the idea that Rangers are willing to give him time to adjust to the physical and tactical demands of Scottish football. Ultimately, Skov Olsen still has an opportunity to define his Rangers' future. With crucial fixtures on the horizon, the stage is set for him to deliver when it matters most. If he can find consistency and produce decisive contributions in the run-in, the £8.6 million option may begin to look far more appealing. Fail to do so, and his spell at Ibrox risks being remembered as a promising move that never quite materialized. For now, the door remains open, but it will not stay that way indefinitely. But that is all for today's video. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We post all the latest Rangers news every single day, so join our fast growing community so you never miss out. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video.